Meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 22 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Agriculture and Agri-Food. I'll start with just a few reminders. Today's meeting is taking place in hybrid fashion pursuant to the Host's order of November 25th, 2021. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So you are aware, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee, and we are televised today, colleagues. My understanding is it will be available in the days ahead for CPAC if they choose to use it. Screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted, and just because we have a couple new folks on the screen that are joining us as witnesses, you can toggle between your language of choice in terms of interpretation between English and French. That's at the bottom of your screen when speaking. And other than that, we would just ask for the benefit of our translators that when you are speaking, try to speak slowly so that they can keep up. Sometimes there is a little bit of delays, particularly with virtual, and we know that we're going to do our best on that end. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, May 30th, 2022, the committee is commencing its study of global food insecurity. I would now like to welcome our witnesses for our first panel, and joining us today from Ukraine, who are also joining, of course, by video teleconference, we have Dr. Maria Boganos, who is the head for the Center for Food and Land Use Research at the Kyiv School of Economics. Welcome. We have Mikhailo Asimov, who is a land use expert for the Center of Environmental Initiatives at EcoAction. And we also have Yulia Klemenko, who is the Member of Parliament at the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. My apologies for the butchering of the translation of that, and the first Deputy Chairman of the Committee on Transport and Infrastructure. Colleagues, I'm required, according to the standing orders, we did have a little bit technical difficulty with Ms. Klemenko's microphone. We weren't able to get a full, complete test done, but we have played around. We do hope that we're able to hear her testimony. She does have a device, and we're going to do our best to make it happen, but I am required to tell you that. Just a couple other things I would like to mention, colleagues. We do have, of course, a number of CUP interns in the room. This is the Canada-Ukrainian Parliamentary Program. 41 interns are on the Hill. Given what we're studying today, which is global food insecurity, which is a direct result of the war in Ukraine, we're very thankful to have our witnesses on the screen, so let me thank you to our witnesses. But the CUP interns have also played an important role of engaging with folks in Ukraine, so thank you so much. Thank you for your work on the Hill, and thank you for being here today. So we're going to start with 5-minute opening statements from each one of our witnesses. I'm going to ask Dr. Maria Boganos. You have 5 minutes. I'll turn the floor over to you, please.
Hello. Thank you very much for this invitation and the word. So I would like to start with reminding you that Ukraine, throughout its history, which spans far beyond 1991, has served as a breadbasket for many of its neighboring and more distant regions. For example, in 1950s, it already produced more than 25% of the Soviet Union's grains. Over the last decade, Ukraine gained quite a prominent position in the global exports of grain and sunflower oil. For example, in 2021, it exported 10% of global wheat exports and 50% of global sunflower oil exports. On February 24th, with the invasion of Russian Federation from the northern, southern, and eastern borders of Ukraine, the situation has changed dramatically. As of today, as compared to February 21, for example, Ukraine doesn't control more than 20% of its territory, which translates into roughly 8 million hectares of arable land, which is, for comparison, 70% of arable land in Germany, which is one of the major exporters in the EU of the grains. And it could be compared to approximately 20% of arable land in Canada. What this means in terms of grains production, it means that Ukraine is losing around 10 millions of wheat, around 3 millions of corn, 3 millions of barley, and around 2 million of sunflower oil. With these losses alone, with the losses of land alone, Ukraine forgoes around 50% of its wheat exports and around 40% of its sunflower exports. With the blockade of Azov and Black Sea ports, the situation is even worse because even in the best case scenario, with the full capacity of Ukrainian railway, the export capacity of Ukraine through the western borders reduces at least by the factor of 10. So we are comparing 6 million tons previously per month to 600,000 tons now in the best case. Why should we care about the exports? This is because sensitive countries, less food secure countries like Egypt, like Bangladesh, like Yemen, like Libya, are highly dependent on imports of wheat, which constitutes more than 30% of the daily calorie intake of the population. And it is also dependent a lot on imports from Ukraine. For example, on average, these four countries import more than 25% of wheat from Ukraine. Some of them 50%, some of them 25%. This means that tremendous reduction in Ukrainian production and export, in addition to high prices for grains that we have already observed before the war, will put these countries at a high risk of famine. In Ukraine as well, the situation is not going great because the affordability of food, that means financial ability of Ukrainians to buy food, has reduced by approximately 40%. This is a huge number. It means that we are maybe expecting certain nourishment issues in more sensitive population of Ukraine. To conclude, unless stopped, the Russian Federation will continue devastating Ukrainian lands, and it will continue threatening domestic and global food security. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Belganos. We're now going to move for up to 5 minutes to Mr. Asimov. Over to you, my friend.
Good evening, good morning. My name is Mikhailo Amosov. I'm representing here a known governmental organization, EcoAction. And here are my few words about food security issues in Ukraine and in the world. So, as a previous speaker said, a lot of land, agricultural land, was actually occupied or bombed, attacked by Russian missiles, equipment, military equipment, etc. And this illegal Russian invasion completely changed everything in every sector of the Ukrainian economy and also agriculture. So in this year, in 2022, Ukraine sowed on 2 and 7 million hectare less agricultural crops than previous year. And also it will cost like shortages on the world food market. And actually I see more risks for global food security than for actually only Ukrainian food security, as a lot of countries are really dependent on Ukrainian grain exports, such as Yemen, Egypt, Indonesia, Bangladesh. So even if this country will find their way to, if they find alternatives for Ukrainian grain, these alternatives will be really expensive for them. So we should find the way to help to export Ukrainian grains from Ukraine. And what about actually more about Ukraine? So we saw that main problem is logistic for Ukrainian agribusiness, because a lot of silos and warehouses was destroyed by Russians, and actually all these objects as it was destroyed, and we like felt in first days really big shortages in supermarkets, in every stores to get some food. And we see this huge Ukrainian dependence on big agribusiness. So here we need to take more support for small and medium-sized Ukrainian agricultural farms, as we see it more adaptable to new realities. And now, and even now, small and medium-sized and private households like producing more foods, more vegetables, more fruits than big agribusiness. And for example, southern parts of Ukraine, like Kherson, Zaporizhia region, they were providing a lot of fruits, berries to other parts of Ukraine. And now it will be big problem for Ukrainian citizens to build a really healthy diet for everybody in Ukraine. And actually, this watermelons, cherries, etc., it was producing by small and medium-sized farmers. There was like not big involvement of big agribusiness there. So we need more support, more state support for small farmers, as it's more adaptable, and we see, as environmental organization, we see it more sustainable to environments and big agribusiness. So yeah, that's it from my side. I would like to answer to any questions you have, and happy to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Almasov. We'll turn to Ms. Klemenko. Let me just start by saying, on behalf of the 11 other members of Parliament around the table, it's great to be able to connect with a fellow parliamentarian. Thank you for your work, and I know you're going to do your best with your headset microphone. So over to you, Ms. Klemenko.
Thank you. I'm Yulia Klemenko. I'm a member of Parliament of Ukraine and first Deputy of Infrastructure and Transport Committee for former Vice Minister of Economy. It's my honor and pleasure to address the committee of the House of Commons of Canada, country that symbolizes a dream coming true. For those Ukrainians who came to Canadian land 120 years ago and built with all other nations a prosperous, human, peaceful, and beautiful country, which supports forces of good and justice. As the topic of our discussion today is a global food crisis, let me start with a number of facts that will illustrate the role of Ukraine as a global food supplier and assess the devastation to the global food supply purposely brought by Russian invasion. Ukraine feeds 400 million people worldwide, mostly in the low-income countries. Ukraine covers in global export 10% of wheat, 15% of corn, 47% of sunflower oil. Ukraine exports 58 million tons of agricultural commodities annually, and 90% of it was shipped through seaports of Azov and Black Sea, through developed infrastructure, ecosystem of rivers and seaports facilities equipped with storages and export laboratories. That ecosystem turned 32 million hectares of highly fertile arable area land into well-developing industry next only to probably to the Ukrainian IT sector. On the 24th of February, Russia started bombing Ukrainian cities, killing civilians, and purposely mined and blocked all Ukrainian ports, systematically targeting all grain storage facilities, laboratories, railway infrastructure, fuel storages, and oil refineries. And here I would like you to focus on the most important probably message in my speech, that interruption of the global food supply was not a collateral damage of the war in Ukraine. It was planned hybrid weapon to further massively destabilize the global economy and political order through instigation of famine in Africa and Asia that will result in flooding migration to North America and Western Europe. We have seen this scenario previously played by Russians in Syria that caused massive migration to Europe and deformed European political processes. This time, food is the weapon, and the scale of the crisis will be much bigger. Additional benefits that Russia will expect will be extra revenue resulting from skyrocketing of global food commodity prices in the same way as they benefit from growing energy prices. That's why in Kherson and Donetsk regions in Ukraine, Russians have already stolen 500,000 of Ukrainian grain and moved it to the Russia territory for the further export. As of today, Ukraine stores 22 million tons of grain ready to be exported, with 40 commercial vessels already loaded with 1 million tons of agricultural commodities, however, blocked in the Black Sea by Russia. Understanding how critical our food supply is for many countries, for example, Egypt depends on Ukraine with 80% with wheat consumption. And despite the war, Ukraine has invested into the tripling the river, railway, and road transportation capacity. Now we can transport 1.5 million tons of grain monthly through all this capacity and previously it was 0.5 million tons. So to empty our storages before we get our new crop harvested will take at least 15 months, even with the increased capacity. And you can see a fundamental problem here, both for countries in the need of supply and for the new harvest, as we will have little storage facilities available for the new harvest. Ukraine is ready to create all necessary conditions to resume export from the port of Odessa. The issue is how to make sure that Russia doesn't attack the trade route or bomb the city of Odessa. Ukraine is looking for a solution together with the UN and our Western partners. However, no guarantees from Russia received so far. Russia's proposal to establish corridors for exporting Ukrainian grain in exchange for lifting sanctions are absolutely unacceptable. Looking at this year harvest, we should consider that 20% of Ukrainian land is occupied by Russians. 13% of agricultural land have unexploded mines and shells, resulting in the farmers blowing up their tractors and dying on the field trying to cultivate the land. Nevertheless, we have planted and expect to harvest 80% of all arable land in Ukraine. However, the volume of harvest will be significantly lower this year, resulting from severe shortage of fertilizers, fuel, and labor. Most of the active qualified male population are fighting on the front line. Those women and men working so hard in fields and securing further food supply deserve our appreciation and need our strong support in order to produce food for people in need in Africa and Asia. So this is what we need to do together to avoid global food crisis. Ukraine has to defeat Russia in the sea, in the air, and on the ground. So to unblock Ukrainian sea routes, Ukraine military have to sink 25 and more Russian warships and submarines by anti-ship missiles, MLRS, multi-launch rocket system, and demine the sea routes. To protect our agricultural land, infrastructure, and make sustainable transportation corridors, we will need to strengthen the air defense as well as hold sustainable ground defense operations against Russia, ground advances in eastern and southern Ukraine. That's why we call for further supply of armed vehicles, LAVs, UAVs, artillery rounds, 155 millimeters NATO standard ammunition, M777 howitzers, robotic demining systems. To support Ukraine agricultural export capacity, we need to reconstruct destroyed grains storage facilities, railway and road infrastructure, repair, re-equip, and increase the number of export phytosanitary and veterinary laboratories. All above mentioned will will allow us to end the war and will allow Ukrainians to return to their homes and jobs, to harvest, feed the world, to teach, to treat, and to create our bright future. It will be much cheaper to invest into heavy weapon for Ukraine than to try to resolve prolonged global famine, migration, unrest, and geopolitical turmoil. Also, I would like to end my presentation thanking for all the political, financial, and military support of Ukraine, as well as for the warm and welcome attitude of the Canadian people for all Ukrainians who had to flee the war. I have my personal experience with my two youngest sons staying for 100 days in Toronto with relatives, while myself staying in Kiev and my husband helping Ukrainian army as a sniper. Hope to take my kids back in 2 weeks and make their future safe in Ukraine. Thank you a lot.
Thank you very much, Ms. Klemenko. Just a reminder, I think by and large you did very well with your mic, but just a little bit of the feedback. So when you are asked questions, which undoubtedly you will be, if we could just be mindful of that feedback, that would be great. So let's go to questions. Maintenant, nous avons Monsieur.
We have Mr. Lehoux for 6 minutes to ask questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I would like to thank our witnesses this morning for taking the time to talk to us. And of course, all our thoughts are with you in these difficult times. My question is directly for you, Mrs. the Member of Parliament. You talked about 10% of the arable lands that are being mined. That has important impacts. Can you tell us more about the capacity? You said 80% of the lands have seeds, but will you be able to harvest the crops?
Yes, I said that 13% of our agricultural land have unexploded mines and shells. And yes, we will harvest our new crop if the war will not go further from eastern and southern Ukraine to the central part, because we keep Russian troops out in southern and eastern borders, and will not allow them to come further. But to keep them and kick out from our land, from Ukrainian land, we need heavy weapon. As I said, and this the only guarantee how we can harvest and take our 80% harvest and crop from 80% of arable land in Ukraine. Yes, we harvested 80%, but to take out the harvest, we need to keep out Russian troops from our land.
Alors, merci. Vous êtes...
Thank you very much. You also have some very important problems with regards to infrastructure. Can you elaborate on that? Are there currently a lot of damages with stocking infrastructure, for example, silos, roads that lead or that bring the cereals to their destination? What is the current state of the infrastructure?
At this point of time, Russians bombed and destroyed approximately 25% of our railway infrastructure. I think up to 10% of our road infrastructure, including bridges, and also they destroyed, and particularly and very specifically destroyed storages, grain storages, as well as they destroyed fuel storages. So to take out crop, you need fuel and you need storage to put new crop. And the Russians bombing it all the time. So it will be a great help if you can help us to build and renew storages as well as a part of our infrastructure. I understand that it's a long way, but at least we need railways, roads, rivers, and also we need deblocked ports to export our crop to the Africa, Asia, and many other countries. They are waiting for it. All my Asian and African colleagues just praying that we can deblock seas and deliver grains. People already started starve in Africa, unfortunately.
Merci, Madame. Alors, nous, ici, actuellement, au Canada, on a...
Here in Canada, we put a 35% tax on all of the soil that is being imported from Russia. Do you think that that's a positive thing? What I meant is fertilizer, not soil. but do you think that this is a good solution for this, for applying this extra tax?
Yes, I think it's a good solution because any dollar, Canadian, US, or any kind of dollar or euro coming to Russia, they turn to bullets and killing us. So they have to be isolated economically, politically, and to stay with their Kremlin elite out of the economic environment as well as political environment. Unfortunately, this is the only way how you can punish Russia. You don't have a lot of trade with Russia, as I remember in Canada, but fertilizers, yes, it's important, but they have to pay price for their violence, and we cannot feed the beast because this beast will definitely turn even economic, global economy into the dust, because what they are doing, they are destroying global economy by destroying food supply chains, by increasing price on energy and on the food and many other things. You have to understand at this point of time, political and economical and continental war link to each other. So they will destroy it through, I mean, they are destroying many economic models of other countries by sending migrants, by increasing prices. Like, you know, in Europe, they are struggling because the energy prices, oil prices, food prices, sometimes tripled, sometimes 2 times, sometimes 40%, but making a European economy not very competitive to, for example, Asian economies. Yes, unfortunately, we have to put duties.
Thank you very much.
Beaucoup, Madame Klemenko et Monsieur Lehoux.
Thank you to Mrs. Klemenko and Mr. Lehoux. Now we have Mr. Lewis for 6 minutes.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank all of our panelists for being here in this very important day, and just start by saying, Canada as a nation, you have our unwavering support. The humanitarian aid we're providing, immigration measures, the economic sanctions, military aid. As a nation, we stand shoulder to shoulder with you, and just even on the ground in all of our communities, I know I can speak for my own. We've got grassroots organizations that are volunteering for supports and resources to help with displaced people. But you have our support. But the message I'm getting now is Canada as a nation and the world needs to step things up and do even more. And that message is clear and resonating. So if I could start by asking Ms. Klemenko, the Member of Parliament and the first Deputy Chairman of the Committee of Transport and Infrastructure in Ukraine, thank you for your service. I wanted to start by, you said right now you're sitting on it will take 15 months to empty the storage of grains that you have. And obviously you said that would not allow the new harvest to be to have room to go. So you are working with UN and other partners. I wondered if you can expand on what more we can do to help with that, because that backlog, that will get food out to people, and then it will help with the new harvest coming.
As I said, the only sustainable way, unfortunately, it's a heavy weapon. So we can clean and deblock our ports, but we need a heavy weapon, which we don't have, and for cleaning, demining, and also anti-missiles, anti-ships missiles. This is the best sustainable way. Sure, we have to work in parallel with UN and other countries to make temporary food corridors and export our grains, because we understand that the world depends on our grains. We cannot allow ourselves just to burn it. So if we will not, unfortunately, if we will not transport these grains, we will have to waste it, to burn it, because we need to put new crop on the storages, or to build new storages, which is almost impossible to build in 2 months, because in 2-3 months we will have a new crop, and we need to empty our existing facilities. For that, we need two things. First of all, working on a temporary food routes with UN and Western countries. And we're asking you to put pressure on Russia to allow us to export these grains and feed people in Africa and Asia. The second one, we're expecting that Western countries will be united and will provide us with a heavy weapon so we can do these food routes more sustainable. So Russian ships should be out of the Black Sea and Azov Sea, because first of all, they are violating international law. So this sea, Black Sea, is everybody in the Black Sea working under international law and rules. It's not only Ukrainian, so to say, shore and coast. It's international marine legislation, and they are simply violating and blocking. And we have a lot of foreign ships staying on our in our ports because they don't allow them to get out from the ports. So this is two ways to work with the international organization on the temporary routes and deblock the sea permanently and sustainably.
Well, thank you. And you also mentioned that that this war was designed also to destabilize your food supply, both in Ukraine and then using food as a weapon to destabilize a world economy. As the Minister of Transportation, can you give us a bit of the status of your ports, of your rails, of the roads, and the situation as it exists right now, the challenges? I understand that I think it's 30% of your transit infrastructure has already been destroyed by Russian military offensives.
Yes, all our ports blocked, so no possibility to go through ports. And it was done, as I said, very purposely and from the beginning for the first day of the war. So they just block ports, understanding that this will increase global prices as well. It will lead to the heavy migration from the Africa and Asia, and this is kind of hybrid weapon for them. So they're using food and grain as a hybrid weapon, and not against Ukraine, but against civilized countries. The second, yes, 25% of our railways destroyed. We are repairing it constantly in order to keep it functioning. We are doing it. And I can tell you we're doing it also and we are losing people. More than 120 people worked in railways died because they were repairing during the bomb shelling and during the active war actions. And people paying the price by their blood. And also what we have rivers functioning. Dunabay River, we can use it. We have 3 terminals in there, and we're trying to increase the capacity of this port so we can export, but it's a long-term project. It's not like in 2 months we can do it. It's 1 year, 2 years. You know what to do. It's taking a lot of time to build terminals and additional capacity of the river. And also roads destroyed, but the worst thing, they are destroying grain storages, and as well as they're destroying fuel storages. So we have a huge deficit of fuel for the citizens as well as for the agribusiness. And the price is skyrocketing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis. Thank you, Ms. Klemenko. You're doing very well. Just a reminder, if we can try to avoid the feedback, but keep it up. Maintenant, Monsieur Perron pour 6 minutes.
Mr. Perron for 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Of course, first of all, a sincere thanks for our witnesses, and of course, we are completely with you and we'll do whatever we can to help you. Mrs. Klemenko, we've been talking about the state of infrastructure and so on since the beginning of your testimony, but you, of course, have the opportunity now to talk about elected officials of the members of Parliament of the House of Commons in Canada. What can we do? Do we need to do more for the ports? What do we need to do?
I think what you can do, as I said, three basic things. First of all, it's heavy weapon, and you know, I understand that you don't have the whole range of weapon as, for example, US or Europe has, but you have armored vehicle like LAVs and UAVs. You have artillery around ammunition. You have howitzers. You have robotic demining systems, so we can clean our agricultural land from mines and shells. It's very important because if what they're doing, you know, now it's possible to mine land even out of 100 kilometers, even 80 kilometers far. They are staying, for example, Russian troops staying 80 kilometers from the agricultural land, and they can just send mines for this distance. So they're purposely destroying our agricultural land. And what we need also the robotic demining systems, and also what we need the help of restoration, repairing, and building new storages, grain storages, and laboratories, which is very important because all our laboratories, you know, to export the grain, you need to take all the certificates through laboratories, and all our laboratories in the ports mostly. And because we export all our grain and oil through the ports, 90%. And now we need to build new chain of laboratories on our western borders, on the railway stations, on the roads, you know, on the customs, so to say. So we need to build it from scratch because, as I said, we didn't expect that we will need it in the railways or roads. We had to seize. And that's actually two things we need, and if you can help us with it. But heavy weapon is our priority because we clearly understand that we need to push them back from our territory. And that's the only sustainable way how we can harvest, take our harvest and put more harvest in the next year and feed the world. This is because they will always blackmailing the whole world by agri-crisis and fuel crisis, what they are doing now. And it's, you know, a matter of time when they will say, okay, we will close sea routes for 2 weeks and we will not allow UN to come. And this they are doing all the time with humanitarian corridors. I can tell you that people in the city of Mariupol, the Russians didn't allow us to take these people from Mariupol, our people, Ukrainian citizens, through humanitarian corridors and bring food there from non-occupied Ukrainian territories. As a result, more than 20,000 people died, Ukrainians died in the city without food, water, medicine, and without evacuation. So what do you expect from these people, from Russians, who are doing it with a Russian-speaking city, basically? It was a Russian-speaking city, very close to the Russian borders, and they've done it to Mariupol. And I do not believe in any, so to say, temporary solutions with Russians. Either you defeat them, or they will blackmail the whole world.
Merci beaucoup, Madame. Écoutez, vous avez parlé tantôt.
Thank you very much. You spoke earlier about the lack, and you talked about putting crops on 80% of your lands, but that won't represent 80% of your harvest. So even if we can take the grains out of the ports, what do you foresee for next year? What percentage do you think will be harvested? Do you have an estimate? I know it's a difficult question to answer.
Yes, difficult, but we have estimations. We think that we will be able to export the same amount, probably of 22 million to 30 million tons of grains. But for that, we need the storages. So we need somewhere to put this new crop. This is the biggest challenge and problem. That's why we need to take out the old crop, and put a new one. So we expect that we will be able to deliver 30 million tons to the African, Asian countries and many other countries next year. So because our consumption is dropping because 6 million of Ukrainians left Ukraine and they went to Europe and many other countries. So we have decrease in consumption internally and we can sell it externally.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Monsieur Perron. Maintenant, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Perron. Now, Mr. McGregor for 6 minutes.
Very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses for helping guide our committee in this study, and we really do appreciate the time that you have made to join us today. I would like to start my question with Mr. Amosov with EcoAction. Sir, I was looking at your website, and you had an article there about how the war has put a lot of pressure on the natural grasslands of Ukraine. That's something that our two countries have in common. We also have large tracts of land here, which are our natural grasslands. But you were also talking about, like, your article saying that we shouldn't take land from Mother Nature, but from the invaders. And you were talking about a lot of the Russian and Belarusian companies that lease land in Ukraine. Can you maybe inform our committee about your efforts in that regard?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for your question. Yes, we have such a problem when agribusiness taking more land for their operations, and actually it's already wild ecosystems. And maybe in Soviet Union it was arable land, but then it came back to grassland and even natural reserves, but then agribusiness took it into operation again. And now, because of Russian aggression and this shortages in land for sowing campaign, we see this risk when this demand for more land will increase, because we need more land, we need more grain, more export, etc. And we compare it with Russian and Belarusian companies which lease land in Ukraine from private persons, from government, and from communities. So we would like to take this land from Russian companies and give it into operation for Ukrainian farmers. That would be fair as for us. So yeah, that's main points here.
Thank you for illustrating that for our committee. Ms. Klemenko, in your opening statement, you were making reference to how Russian operations, especially in the occupied lands of Ukraine, they are essentially stealing the agricultural produce of Ukraine and using it for their own profit. What have you heard about the treatment of Ukrainian farmers in occupied lands? Because, you know, here in Canada, the demographics are that our farmers tend to be on the older end of the spectrum. There's a real challenge in our country at getting new generations involved in farming, and it's a skill set that can't be easily replaced. So if you could just maybe illustrate what the plight of Ukrainian farmers is like in occupied lands, and maybe go into a little bit more detail about what's happening to that produce from the Russian occupiers.
Yes, as I said, 500,000 of Ukrainian grains already stolen by Russians. Mostly they are delivering it either to Russia or to Syria and trying to sell it through these countries. Regarding occupied territories and farmers, they are really struggling because these people, Russian soldiers, first of all, Russian soldiers managing, so to say, agricultural business on occupied territories, and they are basically taking out very cheaply from the farmers harvest.
Ms. Klemenko, Ms. Klemenko, I apologize. We're having just a little bit issue with the mic. I think it's come a little bit too close to your mouth. we were pretty good up until now, so we'll trust that we can make it work, but we were having issue with translation. So I've stopped the clock, Mr. McGregor. Ms. Klemenko, why don't we try that again? I apologize that I've interrupted,
Okay.
but if you could just try to pay close attention as you were before, because you were spot on in the past.
Okay, now it's good, I hope. Yes, they stole 500,000 of Ukrainian grain and moved it to, as I said, to Russia and Syria. And also they are treating our farmers on occupied territories very, very badly. So they are they are actually taking for free or at very low prices grains and agricultural food and sending it to Russia, and then they are selling it either on occupied territories or in Russia at a very high price. I can tell you that the difference of price in food between non-occupied territories and occupied territories of Ukraine 3 times. So you can buy potato for example, for 10 hryvnias in Kiev and 30 hryvnias and more in Kherson, which is occupied. So they are basically cheating people, and they are stealing grains and agricultural food. What I can tell you, because it's not even civilians who are controlling occupied territories, but soldiers who are making money on stealing agricultural products from the people who harvest it by their hands. On the skills, we have farmers, and they are probably much younger, because this is a very profitable business in Ukraine. And we are probably one of the few countries without subsidies to the agricultural business. And it's profitable. And so many people turn to the agribusiness because young people, because you can make a lot of money out of it and bring new technologies, increase productivity and many other things. We don't have such a problem like in Canada. Most of our farmers are young, more or less young. And they have new skills, and they're traveling around the world to get more skills and put it into Ukrainian agro sector. And I say that Ukrainian agro sector is 3 to 4 times less productive than yours or in US. So we have a long way to go to increase productivity and to make more money, even to make more money for young farmers in Ukraine.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McGregor. Thank you, Ms. Klemenko. We're now going to move to our second round of questioning. 5 minutes for the Conservatives, 5 minutes for the Liberals, 2.5 each for the other parties. So, Mr. Falk, I believe you are up.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much to all of our witnesses for your presentations. Very excellent information. And Ms. Klemenko, I'd like to get back to you as well. You made some comments early on in your presentation about where you thought the origins of this crisis have been created. And I'm very curious if you could expand on that a little bit. You said that this has been a planned food shortage and also a planned immigration. Can you tell me where these things are being planned from your perspective and vantage point? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, now I'm not. I can tell you that from our experience, we have a war for 8 years with Russia. It's not started 100 days ago. It's 8 years of war, starting from eastern part of and Crimea. Of Ukraine, and we already, very experienced warriors, and we understand that Russia not fight with us only by military forces. They are fighting with us by cyber attacks, by the destabilization of political situation, by many other means. And you can now see that they are also fighting with civilized countries by means like by food weapon. They weaponize food weapon, energy weapon, as well as a result of food crisis will be migration, high amount of migration, a lot of migrants, because hungry people will first try to change their governments and it will be unrest. And then they will go to the lands and countries which can provide food for their kids. And this is, it's obvious. So people will seek to escape famine. They will need to feed their kids, and they will go somewhere, and probably more developed countries like Europe, like North America, and many other countries. People in Africa and Asia will not have other choice than to seek to look for food in other countries, unfortunately, and this will be a result in a migration crisis. That's our prediction. That what we can see inside, and we can see that the Russian war is not only about military operations. It's about many other dimensions, and you have to be very careful about it.
Okay, and can you also explain that a little further? What the end game, or what the perceived benefit of all this immigration would be? Like, obviously, it's going to lead to some complications from a food supply source, but to what end is this being played out?
It probably people who will come, they will need schools, social support. They will need social infrastructure. They will need more housing. They will need more teachers, etc., etc. So we can see it now with 6 million of Ukrainians fled to Europe. So European system, social system of the social public services overloaded by Ukrainians, because Ukrainian kids should go to school, to hospitals. You need teachers and doctors with the fluent Ukrainian, because otherwise you cannot teach Ukrainian kids. They are not speaking Polish or German language. So, and many other things. Even Europe, yes, Europe done very well with the 6 million. It's unexpected that they actually they absorb people, and they are dealing with 6 million of Ukrainians fled the war. But if 10 million of Africans or Asians, 15 millions will come to Europe, for example, or to North America, you will need to provide these people with the basic social needs and public services. You cannot just put them into streets. And that will burden for the social system.
Yeah, and just for clarification, is your understanding that the intent is to overwhelm the social systems of the European countries?
Sorry, can you?
Do you believe that the intent of all this is to overwhelm the social services of all these European countries?
No, the intent is to political destabilization, because social problems will lead to as you can see with, for example, Merkel, and the main argument against the German government was the migration crisis.
Thank you, Ms. Klemenko. Thank you, Ms. Klemenko. Thank you, Mr. Falk. We're at time. We're now going to turn to Mr. Baker, but let me just say, Mr. Baker, I know there's other parliamentarians other than yourself, but as the chair of the Canadian-Ukrainian Interparliamentary Association, we certainly appreciate your advocacy. We appreciate you being here today to ask questions. I think it's appropriate, and you have 5 minutes.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to you and the members of the committee for having me on the committee today. It's a real honor to be here. As the chair was just saying, I'd like to say to our witnesses before I ask my questions that I'm chair of the Canada-Ukraine Parliamentary Friendship Group, which is a group of members of Parliament of all parties. And my apologies. Sorry. MPs in our parliament, as in your parliament, disagree on many things. In fact, in some cases, it feels maybe perhaps like we disagree on everything sometimes. But we are united on Ukraine. And so I want you to know that. And I want to thank my colleagues of all parties for their unity and their strength and all that we're doing together to support the Ukrainian people. Obviously, the war in Ukraine is an existential crisis for Ukrainians. It's a humanitarian disaster with Russia committing genocide. The Canadian Parliament has proclaimed unanimous support for that declaration. It's a threat to global security, to Canada's security, and it's a threat to food supply around the world, as we've been discussing here today. So you and your people are not just fighting for Ukraine, but you're fighting for all of us, and we need to fight for you and know that Canadian MPs of all parties are fighting for you. I'd like to start by asking Ms. Bogdanos a question. and I ask you to be as brief as you can because I have a few other questions left, but what is the humanitarian impact, the potential humanitarian impact of Russia's weaponization of the food supply? Like, how bad could this be for the international community, for people around the world?
Thank you for the question. Well, we already see the results in Ukraine, because Ukrainian salaries are lower, the food prices are much higher, so we have pretty lowered affordability of food in Ukraine. Globally, we have wheat prices, for example, that increased starting from 25th of February. They have increased from by around 30 to 40%. So the countries which are sensitive, like Egypt or Yemen or Bangladesh, they have already been suffering from the higher prices before the war. Now they will need additional policies, or they will need additional humanitarian support in order to provide wheat or grains for their people. This will put tremendous burden either on their budgets, or the people will start being hungry.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now switch to Ms. Klemenko, if I may. You said earlier in the meeting that Russia has offered to allow some food exports in exchange for the reduction of international sanctions on Russia. I was actually on Ukraine 24 TV last night, and I was asked about this. And today you said that the world should not agree to this, which is what I said last night. Why should the world not agree to this?
Because it's a blackmailing. Maybe it's a very short answer, but it's really blackmailing. You cannot, it's violation of all and any international rules and order. So you cannot first block purposely ports and then allow for two routes and asking about the lifting of all sanctions. I mean, next time they will come and block, I don't know, Baltic countries. And then they will say, okay, then we need $10 billion, and we will deblock it. It's a blackmailing. It's a criminal behavior. You cannot accept, if you want to have worldwide rules and orders, and people respect international laws and order, you have to punish such blackmailers. You cannot agree on this blackmailing. And we need to find other ways besides lifting sanctions. I think the routes, the temporary solution, routes with UN convoy will allow us to export it. But the most sustainable way is a heavy weapon. And thank you for your support. I'm from opposition actually, but we are united in Ukraine because we understand that we have one enemy. We have to fight with this beast first, and then we will, argue on any other things inside Ukraine as opposition and ruling party. So thank you for your for your support.
Chair, do I have any time left? Or is it?
You have about 30 seconds if you...
Or 30 seconds, okay. So lastly, Ms. Klemenko, quickly, you every time we've asked you here what you need, you've said weapons. What happens if Ukraine does not obtain the weapons that it needs from the international community?
The war will be long. We will not agree on any capitulation, any kind of concession of our territories. It's impossible. So the war will be long, bloody, and unfortunately, destabilization of political, food, and energy security will be increasing worldwide. So, it's the best way to solve this problem, all these problems, food, energy, and other security, is to stop the war. And for Ukrainians to stop the war, it's to win the war. And I can add to my colleague that now I've heard today economists said that 1.6 billion of people already influenced against and by this crisis, food crisis, in different proportions. Some people eating less, some people eating less because of the high prices, some of the people hunger, but 1.6 billion, according to the Economist, now suffering from this food crisis.
Thank you, Ms. Klemenko. Thank you, Mr. Baker. Maintenant, Monsieur.
Now, Mr. Perron, for 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you again for your presence and for being here. Mr. Amosov, you mentioned in your introduction that we had to absolutely find a way to export the grains from Ukraine. Mrs. Klemenko also mentioned that a few times. We talked about, well, we saw that maybe there was a problem of compatibility with the railways. Can you speak about that, Mr. Amosov?
Thank you for your question. I agree with Mrs. Yulia that the only way to export enough grains and food abroad, it's only seaports. Unfortunately, our railway is not accessible, and it's not enough of railways capacities to export so many grains. It's like 20 million tons of grains in Ukraine. So, and also we should do it through European countries, Poland, Lithuania, even Netherlands. So it will be much longer logistic chain as it was before. So it will be much more expensive, much more longer. And the best way is to unblock Ukrainian seaports for now.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Mrs. Bogonos, same question.
Yes, the logistics problem in Ukraine, as correctly noticed by Mykola, is huge. Indeed, the width of the railways in Ukraine and the European countries is different. That's why in order to transport through the western borders, the grains need to be unloaded from the Ukrainian wagons, and put on the western machines in order to be transported further. This is problem number one. The related problem is that the capacity of our common checkpoints at the borders does not always allow such a procedure. So the checkpoints with such facilities are limited, which limits additionally to the capacity of the Ukrainian railway to transport. It limits additionally the exports. So this is problem number two. Problem number three that we can point is that the capacity of the European ports to store Ukrainian grains, because European ports have the facilities for the usual amounts of grains that they've been transported, plus, of course, certain additional storage. And now these huge amounts that can come from Ukraine, it's simply there is very limited place to store. So the Ukrainian farmers started investing in buying something like older storages in Europe. Of course, those producers who can assemble money for buying that, they try to put additional investments into building these storages in Europe. But this is a huge investment for them, of course, and not everyone can afford.
Merci.
Thank you, Mrs. Bogonos, and thank you, Mr. Perron. Now, Mr. McGregor for 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Chair, Ms. Klemenko, I'd like to go back to you. So you have very much identified, I think all of our witnesses have identified the importance of securing safe passage from the port of Odessa through the Black Sea. I guess one of the problems is, we know Russia is engaged in criminal acts here. We know they are engaged in blackmail. The problem is that Russia has a permanent seat on the UN Security Council, which often hobbles that organization's effectiveness. I guess what I want to know is, in the Black Sea, you've got major neighbors. You've got Turkey, you've got Bulgaria, Romania. Do you have any intelligence on what their naval forces are doing? I guess outside of us continuing to support Ukraine with heavy weapons, what does Canada need to do to push with international allies on trying to secure that passage? Do freighters need naval escorts, et cetera? I'd just like to know in what practical terms we may have to work with the knowledge that Russia is going to try to block us at every turn.
Yes, we understand that Russia blocking UN and other international organizations, and there are a lot of Russians not only in UN but in MAGATE, which is the nuclear, organization, etc. And we saw these hidden links all the time. That's why we are systematically fighting against presence of the Russian employees and officials in the international organization. I'm doing it very carefully. I know all of them. I'm just trying to take them out from this organization because they are heavily influencing decision making, unfortunately. We can see it in infrastructure and other areas. So yes, what you can do is to jointly, maybe you can send, a letter or decision of your committee or vote in the parliament and to join to these efforts of the convoys. It could be not only UN, it could be US, Canadian convoys that will allow us to take the grains out through the ports. And this is the only sustainable and cheap way, because if we will go through the European ports, through the European railways, etc., the price will increase because this is logistic cost will be increased dramatically on the weak. It's commodities, they are very sensitive to logistic. And that's why the logistic cannot, more than the price of the wheat per ton. And that's, I think you can join, but probably my colleagues from the embassy or colleagues from the international committee will understand more what practical tools in UN and other organizations could be to help with these routes. And I will come back to you after our meeting. I'm not very much specialist in this, political / international organizations.
Thank you, Ms. Klemenko. Thank you, Mr. McGregor. And colleagues, that does it. We actually ran a little bit over time, but I think the testimony was that powerful. I was giving a little bit of leeway to make sure that we could have full answers. So on behalf of all my parliamentary colleagues, to our witnesses, Ms. Klemenko, Ms. Boganos, and Mr. Amosov, thank you so much for agreeing to participate in the study, for being able to provide that important testimony. As has already been mentioned, we stand with you. We appreciate what you've had to inform us as Canadian parliaments here today. And indeed, one final shout out again to our Ukrainian interns on the Hill, many of whom have joined us in person for this proceeding. So colleagues, we're going to take just a 2-minute break. We are going to bring in the next panel, so please don't go far. And thank you so much to all our witnesses.
Thank you too. Thank you for your help and support.
team for helping transition very quickly. The second panel that we have for the second hour of our start of our study is joining us by teleconference today. We have Paul Hagerman, who's the Director of Public Policy at the Canadian Food Grains Bank. Mr. Hagerman, welcome. Maud Labat, Trade Councillor, Trade and Economic Section at the Delegation of the European Union to Canada. I hope I got that right in terms of your last name. Thank you. And we have Maximo Torero Cullen, who is the Chief Economist at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Thank you so much to all the witnesses for your participation today. Now, colleagues, we do have a procedural vote that is going to be upcoming. We do have the ability to not necessarily break at that time. I believe I have unanimous consent in the room to continue through the bells. And indeed, I've talked to all of our colleagues. I think the preference is to vote by application, such that we will stretch it as close as possible, given the fact that we have these wonderful witnesses before us. So with that, I'm going to start with Ms. Labat. You have 5 minutes for opening remarks. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Honourable members of Parliament, it is an honour for me and indeed for the European Union to contribute today to your reflection on the impact of Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. This unwarranted invasion of Ukraine by Russia has once again shown how like-minded the European Union and Canada are in their assessment and in their reaction to the crisis. The European Union, like Canada, has adopted several sanction packages against Russia, Russian entities, and Russian nationals who support this war. The European Union, like Canada, is in parallel assessing the severe consequences that this war is having on the world, including on global food security. In my remarks today, I will present three main points. First, our assessment of the situation in the European Union. Second, our response. And third, how Canada, as a like-minded country, forms an integral part of the EU's response. Now, first of all, our assessment of the war in Ukraine in general is that this is really a man-made crisis, and that Russia's threats and actions prove that Russia is using food, as it is using energy, as a geopolitical weapon, disregarding the lives and the well-being of people in Russia, in Ukraine, and elsewhere. This war in Ukraine endangers the food security of millions of people around the world, and it is already affecting people in many countries. The first victims are obviously vulnerable populations around the world, particularly in low-income countries who depend on food and fertilizer imports. So this invasion is driving food prices up due to increased costs of production, transport, and freight insurance. Fertilizer prices have soared, including in the EU, and severely restrict their affordability for smallholder farmers in developing countries and in the EU. Russia has also destroyed substantial food stocks, as you heard earlier, production, as well as processing and transport capacities in Ukraine. We believe that the Russian military is deliberately targeting the Ukrainian agricultural sector. When Russia bombs Ukrainian fields, destroys and loots food storages, when Russian warships block Black Sea trade routes, it not only affects Ukrainian wheat and grain exports, it also directly negatively impacts the daily lives of people in Africa and Asia. Now, as you heard before, the numbers may be a bit different, but our assessment is that Ukraine accounts for 10% of the world wheat market, 13% of the barley market, and 15% of the maize market, and over 50% of the world sunflower oil market. We estimate that 49% of winter wheat, 38% of rye, and 63% of corn to be harvested this summer is situated in zones that are at risk. Between 20% and 30% of the areas under winter cereal, maize, and sunflower seed production in Ukraine will either remain unharvested or not be planted this spring. The consequence of this is that food is missing or becoming very expensive. Some grain-producing countries are introducing export quotas. In addition, Russia, Belarus and China have announced export restrictions or bans on fertilizers and fertilizers components, and the European Union, of course, is vigorously opposed to such trade restrictions. Now, for us in the European Union, there is no immediate threat to food security because the European Union is a big producer and a net exporter of cereals, but the immediate impact rather lies in the increase of costs throughout the food supply chain, in the disruption of trade flows from and to Ukraine and Russia, as well as the impact on global food security. If you take the EU's neighborhood, in North Africa and in the Middle East, both availability and affordability are at risk in wheat, which is their basic food staple. The same is true in sub-Saharan Africa or in Asia. The European member states meeting in Versailles in mid-March 2022 called upon the European Commission to take urgent action to present options to address the rising food prices and the issue of global food security. And on the 23rd of March, the European Commission adopted a communication on safeguarding food security and reinforcing the resilience of food systems. Let me briefly take you through the actions that this communication sets out. First, it presents our immediate actions to safeguard food security in Ukraine and around the world. Second, we address the challenge of food stability in the EU food system with a range of measures to support our farmers and maintain affordability for our citizens. And finally, we confirm the European agenda to make our food system sustainable and resilient for the years to come. In the interest of time, I'll only cover the first 2 points, but I'm happy to answer questions about the rest. So helping third countries and, of course, Ukraine.
Ms. Labat, I apologize. We're actually at 5 minutes, and I want to give you a little bit more time, but I know my colleagues are going to want to ask so many questions, so perhaps we'll tee them up accordingly when we get around. Mr. Torero Cullen, you have up to 5 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Excellencies and honorable members of the committee. So based on what I want to raise first is that based on our Global Food Crisis Report released in May 4th, already in 2021, around 193 million people were in crisis, which means IPC 3 or above. In this dramatic context is that we now face the war in Ukraine. FAO sees three major types of risk for global food security. These derive from the direct effects of the conflict upon global food and agriculture, and those that are related to macro and cross-cutting factors, and those related to humanitarian risks, which of course are the humanitarian risks within Ukraine. But the macro impacts, which is the level of indebtedness of countries at this point, the poor countries, and also the linkage between energy prices and fertilizers, has put a significant risk into the agricultural sector that we didn't have before. As we all know, both Ukraine and Russia Federation are important players in the global commodity market, and the uncertainty surrounding the conflict prompted a significant further price increase in global markets, particularly those of wheat, maize, and oilseeds. And this increase came to a top of already high prices driven by robust demand and high input costs because of COVID-19 recovery. In March 2022, the food price index reached its highest level since its inception in 1990. The FAO Food Price Index for May fell very moderately for the second consecutive month. It dropped only 0.6% from April. And this decline was mainly due to the drops in the price index of vegetable oils and dairy products, each falling by 3.5% month to month. By contrast, the cereal price index rose by 2.2% from April, reaching an all-time high, surpassing the March 2022 peak. And the meat price index also increased, but very modestly, 0.5%. Export forecasts for both Ukraine and the Russian Federation for wheat were revised since the start of the conflict, and other market players, most notably India and European Union, increased their exports. This partially compensated for the exports lost from the Black Sea region, leaving a relative modest gap of about 3 million metric tons for the case of wheat. The impact of the current crisis was significant for wheat importing countries, which were highly concentrated on Ukraine and Russian Federation. Countries that are heavily reliant on wheat imports include Turkey and Egypt, but also a number of sub-Saharan countries, including Eritrea, Somalia, Madagascar, Tanzania, Congo, and Zambia. And these countries need to identify new suppliers, which could pose a significant challenge, at least in the next 6 months. And of course, Northern Africa and some countries in South Asia were significantly dependent of the imports of wheat from Ukraine and Russian Federation. While wheat is an important staple in North Africa, it is not necessarily an important foodstuff in Sub-Saharan Africa, with some exception, although the food price import bill has increased because these are also inputs for feedstock, and also the oilseeds, which has increased significantly the level of the food import bill of these countries. Despite this, there are food crisis countries represented here which are part also dependent on the imports of these two countries. So the countries which are in emergency today also were import dependent of these countries. Maize exports from Argentina, USA, and South Africa were forecasted to increase. And overall, the level of gap that we have today is around 8 million metric tons. Maize export prices surged in March to their highest level on record in response to the abrupt suspension of exports from Ukraine, and maize prices fell a little bit later in April, but very slightly keeping the highest levels that we have today. And of course, in global oilseeds, Ukraine and Russian Federation export around 63% of global oilseeds, putting significant pressure also in this market. Now, one very important topic is the fertilizer prices, which have also increased significantly, and fertilizer affordability has decreased significantly. This is a reflection of an increase on gas prices and also of the export restrictions by Russian Federation, which is the first exporter of nitrogen, the third of phosphorus, and the second of potassium in the world. Key cereals and high-value commodities exporting countries like Brazil, Argentina, Bangladesh for rice, and others are import dependent on fertilizers from Russian Federation with levels that vary between 70% to 20%. Moreover, the primary challenge for Canada and the US farmers is the price of fertilizers. Soaring natural gas prices have pushed up the cost of nitrogen-based fertilizers such as ammonia, which jumped from $700 a ton in August 2021 to more than $1,600 in May 2022. The price of potash rich in potassium has also hit records above $100. So what we are observing here is putting a challenge not only on food access, but also a huge challenge on food availability, which is our major concern for the next year, for 2023. Not only that, we are seeing levels of export restrictions, which are around 17% or a little bit more of all the calories being traded. And this puts a significant challenge also, in addition to the increase in oil prices and diesel fuel, which has increased substantially and which is scarce in many countries in Africa at this point. So all this situation has put us in a position where we need to react quickly to minimize the potential risk that countries are facing. And we need to first support the ability of Ukraine farming to harvest and export. We need to provide humanitarian assistance to the country, but we also need to refrain from imposing export restrictions, recommit to AMI so that we have more transparency, and ensure that any measure taken to address the crisis do not exacerbate food insecurity and on the contrary, increase resilience. Finally, we need to actively identify ways to make up for the potential future gaps in global markets, working together to foster sustainability, productivity increases where possible, to avoid what I was saying before, a problem of food availability in 2023. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Torero Cowan. We'll now move to Mr. Hagerman for up to 5 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you. The crisis, the food crisis that the previous two witnesses have so adequately, so well described is not new. This is almost a repeat of what happened in 2008. Food prices sky high, countries putting export restrictions, millions of people forced into poverty. At that time, we saw that infant mortality rose, people pulled their kids out of school to go to work, and there was food-related riots in dozens of countries. This happened 14 years ago. The causes were slightly different. It's happening again now. This should be no surprise because there's problems with the global food system. And one of the biggest problems is that many developing countries have been relying on food imports instead of building up their own agriculture. An example of that is that across Africa, the average yield of corn is only 1 to 2 tons per hectare. Compare that to 10 tons per hectare in Canada. There's lots of opportunity to increase yields, increase productivities in developing countries, but the investment has not been there. One of the reactions to the food crisis in 2008 was that the G7 and other countries agreed to invest billions of dollars in food security in developing countries to address what they referred to as a decades-long lack of investment. Canada doubled its aid for agriculture at that time. Unfortunately, that priority only lasted 3 years. By 2013, the aid dollars dropped back down to their pre-crisis levels. And in developing countries, the crop yields remained low, livestock diseases took a toll, and for the brightest young people, they saw their future anywhere except on the farm. In 2008, the crisis was caused by largely weather factors. This time it's caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but we're seeing the same thing, this low investment in agriculture. So I want to focus on what Canada can do to help developing countries, because that's our expertise at the Food Grains Bank. Our goal is a world without hunger. Last year, we served nearly 1 million people in 33 countries through program work in food assistance, nutrition, agriculture, and livelihoods. Your study's asking what's the impact on global food insecurity and what can Canada do? So I won't repeat the numbers of people who are hungry. The previous witnesses have done that very well, but let me remind you that those numbers are going up every month. In Ethiopia, the cost of a food basket for a family rose by 64% between 2019 and March of this year. In Kenya, we're seeing that cooking oil has doubled in price. The commodity suppliers that we go to, they used to guarantee their prices for 6 months. Now they only guarantee them for 1 or 2 months, if at all, because prices are so volatile. That means that Canada's aid reaches fewer people than before, even though more people need help. People are making tough choices. Some are shifting away from protein-rich foods and just focusing on starch. Rice and corn, nothing else. It fills the belly, but family nutrition suffers. People pull their kids out of school, they borrow money at high interest rates, they sell their livestock. These things help in the short term, but they have long-term costs. So I have 2 recommendations for Canada to deal with this crisis now. In the short term, Canada needs to increase humanitarian assistance, especially for food. Canada commits money for food assistance through an international treaty called the Food Assistance Convention. Our commitment, our minimum commitment, is the same now that it was 9 years ago, even though the drop in the value of the Canadian dollar and the rise in food prices means that that money only feeds half as many people. Canada should bump up food assistance and consider something like peg our food assistance to the food price index that Mr. Cullen talked about. As food price rises, we give more. Second is, in the long term, Canada should focus more on agriculture and food security in the aid program. Help developing countries become less dependent on imports. Our own organization, the Food Grains Bank, has worked with tens of thousands of farmers for decades across Africa, most of them with 2 hectares of land or less. From our own experience, we know that these small-scale farmers can significantly increase production. In fact, most smallholders can expect at least a doubling of yields in only a few years. That's more tons of grain grown in Africa. It's also better livelihoods for poor families, and it's improved climate resilience. Thank you. I'll leave my comments there and await questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hagerman. Right on time. Well done. Gold star. We're going to start with questions. And colleagues, the bells may start, but as we've agreed, we're going to go as far as we can, and I will work with the clerk accordingly. Mr. Epp, over to you for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As it was with Mr. Baker, this study and this war is personal. All 4 of my grandparents were born in Ukraine, and I've been there 3 times. Testimony in the earlier panel we've talked a lot about grains here, but food and vegetable production from the Kherson, Zaporozhye, Melitopol regions. I've visited that area of the world 3 times, put my hands in the soil, and so this becomes very, very personal for me. Also, in the interest of transparency, I worked with the Canadian Food Grains Bank for 5 years prior to becoming elected. So, Mr. Hagerman, it's good to see you again. I'd like to begin my questioning with you. You mentioned that Canada has not increased its minimum commitments for food assistance for several years. Can you put this in comparison with other countries in the world? How are other countries responding?
Thank you. The Food Assistance Convention, as I said, is an international treaty that has about 15 countries signed onto it. Canada is the 3rd largest contributor. The 2 biggest ones are the US and the European Union. Both of those countries have made major increases in their commitments over the past several years, so that they're now giving 30 to 40% higher than what they did 9 years ago when the convention began. Canada's minimum commitment is flat. As I say, that's the minimum commitment. Canada usually gives higher than the commitment, but there's nothing to stop a future from government from dropping down to that minimum level. So we're suggesting that Canada should actually peg its minimum closer to what it's currently giving. It wouldn't actually cost any more money. It's more a political commitment to say we recognize this need, and we'll contribute at this level and peg it to the food price index so that if food prices go up, Canada's commitment goes up as well, and we can continue to feed as many people.
Thank you. Following up with that, you talk about Canada's ability to perhaps help other countries double, hopefully even triple their yields. I know from my own experience some of that success in Ethiopia. You know, how do we do that? What's the process, and how can the Canadian government support those efforts?
Thank you. As I said, our own program work at Food Grains Bank has lots of experience on this. We've dealt mostly with technology or methods called conservation agriculture, and any Canadian farmers will know what I'm talking about with minimum tillage and soil cover and crop rotations. The principles are the same, whether you're dealing with 1,000 hectares or a half a hectare. The tools are different, of course. But using conservation agriculture, we have worked in about a dozen African countries, close to 100,000 African farmers, and we find that it's a knowledge-intensive approach that doesn't require them to purchase a lot more inputs. It's something that once they've learned it, then they can keep practicing it year to year, and it often spreads to neighbors, what we call spontaneous adoption. So people that were not even in touch with our extension agents are now picking up these techniques and passing them on. Yields increase by an average of 2 to 3 times. Sometimes yields increase by 5 times over a period of only a few years. So conservation agriculture is one knowledge-based approach. We also have experience with a variety of others, and lots of other organizations have as well. So agroforestry, associations between crops and livestock, and think about fish as livestock as well, so fish ponds and crops, etc. Associations between, like intercropping between maize and legumes that helps them both. So there's a variety of techniques that are knowledge intensive rather than input intensive that can dramatically increase yields beyond that 1 or 2 tons per hectare, much higher than that.
Thank you very much. A question for Mr. Cullen, please. We've talked and we've heard much testimony around the impact of Ukraine on its citizens and its effect with other countries through their exports. Russia is the aggressor here. Russia is also a big agricultural powerhouse. What third-party countries are potentially also affected by Russia's involvement with this war through either curtailed investments, or really aren't there any?
You're muted, Mr. Torero Cullen.
Yes, as I mentioned in my presentation, all the countries which are food import dependent of both Russian Federation and Ukraine are affected. The ones which are fastest affected were the ones that were more than 50% import dependent of these 2 countries, especially North Africa, South Asia, and other countries in Africa. Now, the problem is not only the import dependency, which part of it has been covered by other countries which have increased their supply and the export surpluses, but also the problem is the access to fertilizers. Given the importance of fertilizers, the access to fertilizers could be affecting substantially many countries that cannot produce what they were producing before. And that's the biggest challenge that we're facing right now.
Thank you. I'd like to follow up with the whole question. Much of the world is focusing on bio solutions to some of the energy concerns that we have. Given the crisis that we have, can the world do both? Address environmental concerns through, continued growth in biofuels and continue to feed the world? Is our productive capability there?
Yeah, so always when you have trade-offs in the decisions you make, no? Biofertilizers still has a lot to go, so I don't think that will be the immediate solution, but it's something that can progress over time. Right now, if fertilizers cannot move faster, which there is a possibility that they can move because they are not part of the sanctions, we believe, like as you mentioned in the case of Ethiopia, one of the major successes of Ethiopia is the use of soil maps, which have helped to increase efficiency in the use of fertilizers. And that's something that can be used very fast in many countries to reduce the waste in terms of fertilizers. So the blending of NPK has to match what you really need, which is the problem that we face today.
Thank you, Mr. Torero Cullen. Thank you, Mr. Epp, for your line of questioning. Now we have Mr. Drouin for 6 minutes.
Chair, I want to thank the witnesses who took the time to come before committee today. My first question would be to Mr. Torero. You've mentioned countries are are trying to find new suppliers, and we've heard from previous testimonies that while we may be able to find new suppliers, they could be expensive because of transportation. Is this something that you're seeing right now happening in the marketplace, or?
Yes, yes, sir. There is a significant problem on what we call the food import bill. So the cost of what you imported before the war, and what you import today. And there is several dimensions that have increased substantially the food import bill of all these countries which are vulnerable. One is, of course, the prices, which have increased substantially, but the second is the devaluation of the exchange rate, which also increase the cost of the import bill. What we are doing what we are proposing to the IMF is to develop what we call the food import financing facility. So essentially what we do is we calculate the gap in the food import bill, and we rank the countries by vulnerabilities, and we identify the countries which are priority because we want to minimize potential risk of social unrest. And for example, for Africa, we are talking of about $9 billion, which will be the total coverage of 100% of the gap in terms of the food import bill. And if you cover 10%, will be $0.9 billion. Now, if this is a loan, the cost is minimal, and basically it can be covered with SDRs within the mechanisms that the IMF has. So yes, the food import bill has increased substantially. Just to give you an idea, in the case of Lebanon, the prices have multiplied substantially in terms of Lebanon, and the amount of food that they have imported is around 40% less than what they used to import. And that shows clearly how something that was supposed to be inelastic became elastic because of the crisis we are facing.
And are you worried that, obviously we're starting to see reports of countries limiting exports or having export quotas. What's the message to those countries that your organization would deliver to them?
Yeah, right now we have compared the level of export restrictions in the COVID-19 period, which were minimum, with the 2007-2008, which were around 70% of the traded calories. And today we are a little bit higher than 70.5% of the traded calories. So our position, together with the Agricultural Market Information System position, is that we should avoid any export restriction at this point. One clear example of doing that is what just happened in the food price index of FAO. The reason why the food price index of FAO declined a little in the month of May was because Indonesia removed the export restriction on palm oil. And palm oil and oilseeds is the value that decreased substantially. So it's essential to keep trade open, and it's essential to avoid export restrictions.
Great, thank you. My next question to Mr. Hagerman, I want to thank your organization. I've known the work that you've been doing for a while, and I've actually met my other colleague on the other side through Canada Food Grains Bank. Are you guys doing an analysis on the ground with your partners to see what can be done further? And I know that one of the recommendations that you've made is increasing Canada's contribution to the Food Systems Convention. But other than that, are you guys doing do you have any short-term solutions where your organizations can play a bigger role?
Thank you. In terms of short-term solutions, we're kind of struggling because we have committed program funds to help people in particular countries for food assistance, and we're finding that the dollars just don't go as far as they used to. So we had, X number of dollars to feed 3,000 families, and now because of the rising price of food, that money will only feed 2,000 families, and we don't have another source of funds. One thing that we have, we're in the process of doing is working with other civil society organizations or other humanitarian organizations in Canada to appeal to the Canadian public for funding. And we expect an appeal to go out within the next few weeks, looking for money from the public, which we expect that the Canadian public will be very generous. But it would be wonderful if we could match that with funding from government, because, as I said, we're kind of struggling to deal with the rise in prices, and how do we manage that?
Great, thank you. And finally, Ms. Labatt, you've talked about a few things that the European Union was doing with the resolution passed on March 23rd. One of them, I want to touch base on point number 2. You didn't have a chance to explain what they have done to help farmers, but you've said there was some help there. Can you elaborate on that in about a minute? And if you don't have time, I would ask you to politely submit in writing to this committee.
Sure, absolutely, and I can certainly follow up in writing. I think there's been a number of actions that have been proposed in this communication. They mostly, I'm assuming your question relates to the help that we're giving to European farmers in the EU. So that's a support package of 500 million euros. So that would be roughly 750 million Canadian dollars that make use of our crisis reserve. And the idea is to support the producers that have been European producers that have been most affected by the serious consequences of the war in Ukraine. And it allows member states to provide additional financial support to farmers and to address market disturbances that come from both the increase in the input costs and for trade restrictions. So we have also accepted more advances of direct payments and triggered an exceptional and temporary derogation to allow the production of crops on fallow lands. And then we have called on member states also to take some measures such as reducing VAT, the equivalent of our HST, on prices of food, so that food is of course less costly, but that's more for European consumers. But I'll be happy to follow up in writing, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Drouin. Thank you, Ms. Labatte. Maintenant, Monsieur Perron.
On to Mr. Perron for 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. It's very much appreciated. Mrs. Labatte, I'll continue with you. The previous witnesses called upon us to really stress the importance of the export of Canadian grains. How can Canada help in collaboration?
Merci pour votre question.
Thank you for your question. There's a lot of things that the EU is doing, including collaborating with Canada. For us right now, what's most important, and I think you already discussed this with the previous witnesses, it would be to facilitate transit and commerce and trade. The most important thing is to just make sure that we can export what we need to export. The EU adopted in May a communication to establish solidarity links in order to help the export of grains. So that includes having access to more freights, having more terminals, to increase the capacity of stocking. And these are information that I can, of course, send to you. This, of course, helps to make sure that we can move the produce out of Ukraine. We're also looking into how to improve the collaboration between the Ukraine and EU, because the connections and the infrastructures are not equivalent in the EU and in Ukraine. That's one of the first things we're doing in the short term. Other witnesses have also spoken about this, but there is a strong policy in international infrastructure companies, organizations. We're doing what we can to call out on the restrictions and to avoid new restrictions, and that we've talked about in the G7 or at the FAO, at the OMS as well. I will stop there, but if you have any other questions, I'm available. Thank you, Mrs. Labatte. That's very interesting. You seem to give a lot of help to producers, even those who are out of the zone. Is that correct? Can you specify what you mean by outside of the proper zone? Well, with Mr. Drouin, you were saying, if I'm not mistaken, that you help in order to increase production, in order to compensate for the losses on the market with regards to Ukrainian merchandise. Did I understand that correctly? Indeed, we are foreseeing that European producers should be able to increase their production. Our production over the last 5 years of wheat was around 27 million tons. But for 2022-2023, we are foreseeing, if the climate allows us, to export 40 million tons, which would be an important contribution to the world market, or the international market. And this, of course, is subjected to climate conditions, but also to costs. Of course, fertilizers, as other witnesses had mentioned, there's also there is the price of fertilizer, which has exploded in the EU. I think it's more than 280% with regards to the price. So that is also something that we need to look into. Thank you. Mr. Torero Colin, you mentioned in your introduction that we had to act quickly, and I think that there was maybe the increase of productivity. Can you continue speaking about that, which I think you ran out of time earlier?
But in the current situation, for this year, we have a problem of food access because increasing prices. But our major concern is what will happen in 2023. And that has to be resolved very quickly because of the crop calendars and because of the importance of fertilization right now. So fertilizers need to be delivered, despite which will increase efficiencies in the use of fertilizers, as I refer. But despite that, there is an urgency for countries that have a gap in the fertilizer that they need to be able to resolve that as soon as possible. As you are aware, the US has clearly stated that they don't include fertilizers and food in sanctions, and they also has proposed the issue of letters to try to accelerate that process so that you de-risk the problem of mobility of fertilizers out of Russian Federation.
Parfait, merci.
Thank you. What can Canada do to help? What would be your recommendation? In 15 seconds, please.
No, Canada can always help. Is an exporter of fertilizers too, so Canada can help in that sense. But also it's very important to find mechanisms in which fertilizers can be moved out and distributed to the countries which are at need. The major concern we have right now is rice, because it's the time in which they need to fertilize before harvest. And that's what could create a problem in rice, which is the only commodity which is doing okay right now.
Merci, Monsieur Torero Colin. Monsieur Perron. Maintenant, Monsieur...
Thank you, Mr. Torero Colin. Now, Mr. McGregor for 6 minutes.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Labatt, I'd like to start with you. Our previous panel of witnesses, included a Ukrainian member of parliament and organizations that were in Ukraine, and they really gave us an up close and personal view of what's going on in that country. They all said that relieving the port of Odessa was incredibly important, and it was causing a very serious backlog. Their storage capacity is maxed out, and that will impact whether they are able to seed and harvest the crop this year. The EU has, I think, Romania and Bulgaria, which have coastline on the Black Sea. And I know that Turkey has been considered as possibly a future member of the EU, but it's also, of course, a member of NATO. I guess, from the EU's perspective on efforts to secure safe passage from Odessa, which would be the most efficient way of relieving the crisis in Ukraine, like relieving the storage crisis, but also freeing up a lot of that food. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about the EU's efforts in that regard, since you are so much closer in the neighborhood and probably have a perspective that we as Canadian parliamentarians don't?
So indeed, actually, I think the most recent calls have come from, I think, the president of Slovakia recently, who has called for safe passages out of the port of Odessa, which could be safeguarded by Turkey or guaranteed by Turkey or by the UN, as I understand it. I think so far our efforts have focused on land passages, and precisely since the port was blocked, trying to facilitate access through those solidarity lanes that I mentioned earlier to help Ukraine export its agricultural goods. Now, it is very complicated because of the border crossings and the very, very long waiting times at the moment. We want to reduce those. We want to make, we've called basically on EU market players to help with this crisis with additional vehicles, by setting up matchmaking logistic platforms, and to sort of create one-stop shops in the member states for these solidarity lanes. We've also asked market players to make additional rail slots available for exports, and to try and remove bottlenecks. So we've also worked with customs, national customs authorities to accelerate procedures at border crossing points, and we're also trying to make sure that we create additional storage capacity in the EU. So it's really at the moment an effort that we're doing on the land borders as the port of Odessa, as you were saying, is blocked. But I think there is, ongoing discussions on how to help. As you know, the EU is not a military power, and so at the moment, I think there's discussion on how to facilitate, how to safeguard, but we're not there yet.
Thank you for that perspective. For the food grains bank, Mr. Hagerman, you talked about the two things that Canada can do. So I think we as a committee can take it as a clear recommendation that the Government of Canada increase food assistance through the Food Assistance Convention, that we peg our assistance to the Consumer Price Index and really step up to the plate. But on your second part, on helping developing countries become more independent, I guess to realize resiliency. Can you maybe talk a little bit about like Canadian agricultural know-how? Is it in equipment or is it in our expertise in planting? Can you maybe go into a little bit more detail and help this committee make a recommendation in that regard?
Thank you. First, just one point of clarification. I was talking about tying food assistance to the food price index, not the consumer price index.
Yes, thank you for that.
Price index from the FAO. But on to your actual question, Canadian expertise, I think there are parts of Canadian agriculture expertise that are valuable, but it's not so much equipment, because we tend to make big equipment for big fields. And a lot of, most of the farmers, in fact, in developing countries have very small fields. So it's not so much things like equipment, but it's often questions of understanding soil biology, which Canada is actually a leader there, doing lots of research. If you think about the Global Institute for Food Security and University of Saskatchewan. I mean, they've done tremendous work on soil biology, which is very transferable to developing countries. Some of our work on value chains, some of our work on processing, I mean, those things are very helpful regardless of the scale, more so than equipment per se. Even understandings of how does conservation agriculture help soil biology? How does it help water use? Those kind of things can be quite helpful, and they transcend the question of scale.
We'll have to leave it there, Mr. McGregor. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hagerman. We're going to go to the second round, colleagues. I'm going to do my best to get us through. 3 minutes, Mr. Hoback, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Chair, and what a great study. It's relatively timely for sure. One of the first things I was going to ask you, you mentioned it earlier about the Indonesian palm oil being put in under trade restriction. Do you see that being more of an ongoing problem as we get into tighter supplies, and how is that going to impact cooking oil around the world? to you, Mr. Torero.
Oh, no, sure. No, what I was referring to is that they had an export restriction, which they removed, and that's why the oilseeds price went down. No, as you know, Indonesia is one of the key exporters of palm oil. And if you have the sunflower exports that were restricted because of the war, which were around 67%, for sure, any country like Indonesia that puts an export restriction will immediately increase the prices. So the point is that needs to be avoided to avoid prices to go up of oilseeds, which really affects Africa because affects not only cooking oil but other uses of oilseeds. Exactly.
What products or what commodities do you see possibly having the same types of responses throughout the next year? Where are we really short on commodities?
So one of the countries which responded positively that had an expansion in the exports was India in terms of wheat. They have now put an export restriction in terms of wheat exports, although they already export around 4.5 million more metric tons than what they used to do in the past, which helped to reduce the gap of wheat. But our major concern also is rice. Because if countries are not able to get the fertilizers they need, then there could be an issue on rice. And that was one of the major triggers that we have in the 2011 and 2007, 2008. If you recall, rice is a very thin market, and therefore automatically any export restriction will significantly exacerbate the increase in prices. So we need to avoid that happening in rice, which today have enough supplies. Let's hope that they can get the fertilizers they need so that next year they also have enough supplies.
And then when it comes to protein for cattle feed, products like that, how do you see that trade handled in light of what's going on?
Everything that happens on the cereals will affect the feedstock, no? And we have seen an increase in the cost of feedstock, and therefore that's an increase in the meat. Now it's important to understand that from the grain that still is in Ukraine, which they said is between 20 to 24 million metric tons, the number increased because less consumption locally. A significant share of that is not for human consumption, it is for feedstock. So one option could be to find ways to store that and then later deploy it so that we avoid a bigger distortion in the market. So what is the concern? Assume that you move out all the grain that is for human consumption right now. When the gap of wheat is only 3 million metric tons and the gap for maize is 8 million metric tons, you could also create the opposite problem, no? For farmers. If it is correct what European Union is saying, that they will increase the yield substantially, that could affect the prices in a situation where the affordability of inputs is declining substantially because of the increase of fertilizers and of other inputs. So we have to be very careful and to understand what is there and how that should be moved out and how it should be handled to avoid a bigger distortion.
Thank you, Mr. Torero Colin. Thank you, Mr. Hoback. That's 3 minutes. Mr. Turnbull, over to you.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to all our panelists for being here today. Really appreciate your testimony and your expertise. So I think most of you in your opening remarks focused on or talked about supporting a more sustainable and resilient food system in the future, and perhaps decreasing reliance on imports and supporting smallhold farmers. Mr. Hagerman, I know you talked about conservation agriculture as being able to increase yields. You also, I think, said in your opening remarks that the problems we're experiencing today are not new. So the question, I mean, and it goes without saying that we need to respond immediately to the pressures that the global food supply is under, given Russia's invasion of Ukraine. As we react to this crisis, though, do you share a concern that we may run the risk of further destabilizing our food system in any way? So maybe I'll go to Mr. Hagerman first.
Can I ask for a clarification on that? Further destabilizing our food system by what?
Well, it just seems to me that by reacting quickly to the current food system, we're likely going to have to do things that may run counter to what the long-term objectives might be to create a more sustainable food system. I mean, certainly the smallhold farmers are not going to increase their supply immediately to supply what the world needs right now.
Okay, thanks. The global food system is a big ship. It takes a long time to turn it and make significant change. You know, I referred to the 2008 food crisis. At the time, there was a recognition that there was decades of underinvestment in agriculture. The G7, including Canada and others, you know, put some money into the system for 3 years. It didn't make significant changes. So I think we need to respond quickly, but in fact, it's whatever we do quickly is unlikely to have long-term really shift things dramatically in the long-term food system until we start investing in agriculture in all these countries which currently are so dependent on imports. So I think the short term is a big need, but it's not at risk of undermining the long term. We need to do that as well.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Mr. Terrero Cullen, sorry if I mispronounced it. I'm wondering from you if you, based on any multilateral discussions that have happened, can you see any sort of midterm solutions to the global food security crisis that will alleviate the pressures that we're experiencing right now, but also, I think, increase our chances to building a more resilient and sustainable food system globally?
Unfortunately, we're at time, Mr. Terrero Cullen, but here's what I would offer is that we'll make sure that the clerk provides that question in writing, and we would ask for a response if you're able. Certainly, we would welcome your opinion on that. Maintenant, Monsieur Perron pour...
Now, Mr. Perron, for 90 seconds. This might be the occasion for Mr. Terrero Cullen to finish his answer. What can we do quickly to help the situation? What is the principal recommendation you're making to the Government of Canada?
I think for the most vulnerable countries, it's urgent to implement the food import financing facility. The Government of Canada can support this through the SDR donation to the IMF and to support the IMF to implement this, because there are countries that today are running into huge stress that could end into social unrest if we don't act quickly this year. And second, it's important to find ways to help in the delivery of fertilizers to the countries that right now is a priority because of the crop calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Perron. Thank you to all our witnesses. Just for some of your context, we do have a procedural vote that is going to be happening in about 5 minutes, so that is what has rushed us a little bit at the end. We did get a second round of questions in, and we certainly appreciate you being here. Ms. Labatt, I might just ask, not a question, but just a comment. Mr. Drouin had asked for the EU's perspective on some of the programs to support farmers. It was mentioned about fertilizer. I don't have the time to ask it to you, and these things don't happen overnight, but Canada being one of the largest, if not the largest, fertilizer producer in the world, what member states would particularly benefit from Canadian exportation in this domain? If that's something you could provide in writing, we would welcome that. But otherwise, we will let you enjoy your day, and we sincerely thank you for your contribution to our study. Colleagues, just two quick pieces of business. One is the committee budget. Would someone please move that the budget be accepted? It was distributed, and I don't foresee us having any issue with that. Okay, I have unanimous consent, so we're good on that end. The second piece is on Thursday, colleagues, we are welcoming the Minister of Agrarian Policy and Food from Ukraine, the Minister of Agriculture in our contemporary aspect. I would like to be able to just hold a press conference in the morning to try to draw attention to what we are doing. I think it's extremely important. The testimony that we've heard today was important. Mr. Drouin, I think you have a motion. I believe this should be pretty straightforward because we've talked about it before.
Do we need a motion, or are we, if there's no agreement, or if there's agreement, we can just, we give you the...
Can you just read it into the record for the...
That the clerk of the Standing Committee on Agriculture and Agri-Food make the necessary arrangements for a press conference to be held on Thursday, June 9th, 2022, and that the committee be represented by the chair.
Thank you, colleagues. I appreciate it. And I think it's important that we all collectively continue to highlight the work that we're doing here. As Mr. Epp had mentioned and Mr. Baker, this is personal for all of us. So with that, colleagues, I will let us break for our vote. We will see you Thursday, and thank you for all your good work. Cheers.